Do you feel like singing on a cold morning?
Yes.
I know. Let's go ahead and stand up, shall we? It's none of those melodies that we just enjoyed. This will be a brand new one to you, and you'll be just fine. We're going to do some clapping to get us going, and then you got to put one foot in front of another. You got to put one foot in front of the other. One, two,
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love.
Don't give up hope.
Don't give up hope.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
Don't you give up.
Don't you give up.
Keep moving on.
Keep moving on. You gotta put one foot in front of the other foot and front of the other one. One foot in front of the other foot and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other foot and front of the other one. One foot in front of the other foot and lead with love.
Lift up your eyes.
Lift up your eyes.
Don't you despair.
Don't you despair.
Look up ahead.
Look up ahead.
The path is there.
The path is there. You gotta put one foot in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love.
I know you're scared.
I know you're scared.
And I'm scared too.
And I'm scared too.
But here I am.
But here I am.
Right there with you.
Right there with you. You gotta put one foot in front of the other one. One foot in front of the other one. One foot
Good morning. Welcome. I trust and hope you're all keeping warm in these chilly mornings. Welcome to the Olympia UU congregation. Our community envisions an interconnected world that's loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission, to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become. Thank you for joining us this morning. You're welcome here just as you are, whatever beliefs sustain you, whomever you love, however you understand and express yourself, and in all the ways you're still becoming the person you hope to be. My name is Kurt Hill. I use he, him pronouns. I am a member of the worship arts team. Leading worship with me today is our Reverend. Let me try that again. Leading worship with me today is Reverend Mary Gear and Troy Fisher, our music director. Here are a few things that you should know about our service today. As always, we're streaming on Zoom and YouTube, and the service is being recorded. For those of you here in the sanctuary, you will notice from time to time creative subtitles up here. You can follow along. It might provide some amusement from time to time. And over here we have fluffy chairs and activities for your hands, so Lark and anybody else who wants to play over here has got something to keep themselves comfortable. We are a multi-generational community and we value our young ones. Kids, babies, and teens are welcome in the sanctuary. There's also nursery care and a story time program for children in the classroom wing. We are grateful for the many hands that make worship welcome happen this morning. Boy, I'm really stumbling over them this morning, aren't I?
It's cold.
It's cold. That's all I can think of. That's all I got. So we are grateful for the many hands that make worship happen this morning. Thank you for all who contribute in so many ways. After the service, for those online, we invite you to go into a breakout room for a virtual chat. Reverend Mary has suggested some reflection questions. For those in person, please feel free to join me in the youth room after service for a reflection circle using the questions. At 11:30, please join us online for a forum on investing our values sponsored by the OUUC Faith and Action Team. If you're online, just stay online. There are many things happening at OUUC. Check out the Tuesday electronic update or the website for the most up-to-date information. Now, let us open our hearts and minds as we prepare for worship. It is good to be together. This morning, we join Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition. If you're online and have a chalice or candle, please join me as we light our chalices together with the words of the Reverend Joseph Cherry. As we gather together for worship this morning, being both near and far, we light our chalice, as we do each week. It is a symbol of our faith. May its light be a beacon of hope for the many, those who feel lost, those who feel threat, those who feel tired, those who are uncertain. May our beacon of hope help you find home, help you feel safe, give you respite, and honor your searching mind and spirit.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Reverend Mary, and I use she, her pronouns. Our opening words this morning are offered by the Reverend Gretchen Haley. For this one moment, know only that you are loved. Know that you belong here, here among us, here upon this earth. In your body, however tired or broken your heart may be, whatever fear, disappointment, anger you may carry, for this hour, know that you are not alone. Feel the presence of others surrounding you, breathing beside you and with you, discovering together the ways that our voices may rise and fall together in harmony, in hope. Claim here a resilient freedom, the choice for love, for light, to live with joy and gratitude and praise as a form of resistance. Already we are organizing. Come, let us worship together.
And let's sing together again, shall we? Out of the Teal Hymn Book, hymn number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. I invite you to rise and let's join voices. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our stories from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of a sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place. Thank you for singing.
For about 6 weeks or so, hope has been rolling around in my head. You see, that's when I said I would deliver a reflection on hope. As the notion rolled around in my head, I mostly found myself with a vague sense of dread. Like, I've got nothing to say about hope. I literally would wake up in the middle of the night thinking about hope and wondering what I could possibly have to say. Now, that's not to say that I'm hopeless. I don't feel that way. It's just that hope mostly has lived to me as a sort of shallow wanting from some particular outcome. Like when I'm about to hit a golf ball down a fairway, a tree-lined fairway, I'm hoping that it finds the fairway and not ends up in the trees. Hope has mostly lived like this for me, hoping for some outcome I want while at the same time fearing it won't turn out that way. So hope and fear have always been mixed together. I keep noticing how prevalent hope is in my vocabulary and in the ethos of the culture we find ourselves in. We're either hopeless about how we think things will turn out, or hopeful for some good or unpredictably positive future. Something like a ping pong match between positive thinking and deep pessimism or despair. Somewhere in this journey, however, I remembered a passage by Václav Havel that I had read. He says, "The kind of hope that I often think about, I understand above all as a state of mind, not a state of the world. Either we have hope within us or we don't. It's a dimension of the soul. Hope is not the conviction that something turns out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out." I liked what he said. It gave me some access to hope beyond how I casually relate to the concept. So I began to dig in a bit further with an intention to hopefully create an empowering relationship to hope. I started with etymology. Where did this word come from? In the New Testament, it comes from the Greek word elpis. According to Strong's Concordance, elpis means expectation, trust, and confidence. It comes from the root word elpo, which means to anticipate with pleasure and to welcome. Then I read this passage from Joanna Macy. Hope for me is very close to accepting the reality of uncertainty and unpredictability. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that what we do in the present will shape the future. Once again, I'm reminded we really don't know how the future is going to play out. And simply hoping that it will turn out one way or another is idle chatter or magical thinking. As I reflected on all of this, it became clear to me that the sort of hope I want begins with accepting the reality of how life is right now and accepting the reality that I don't know how it will turn out. At the same time, knowing what I do and who I am right now in the present shapes that unknown and unknowable future. And that, I trust, makes sense. Each Sunday, we engage in the spiritual practice of generosity and gratitude by joining together in service of our community and to something greater than ourselves. We each have the power to share, and when we combine our gifts to create an offering, together we're able to do more than any of us can do alone. We also express our gratitude for the gifts that life has given each of us, for the network of relationships in which we live, and for the presence of this community. If you're new or visiting us for the first or second time, you're our guest. We don't expect you to contribute. However, if you are moved by something and you are called to contribute, your generosity is gratefully received. The offering here collected does two things. It helps support the ongoing work of the congregation, which is also supported by your regular pledges. And the offering also supports an organization that serves our community in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. Our Share the Plate organization for January and February is the Medical Equipment Bank. The mission of the Medical Equipment Bank is to receive donated equipment and supplies and provide them to seniors, their families, and individuals with disabilities who can't afford to purchase on their own. This is what they say about their work.
Hi, OUUC. My name is Sabrina Pullen, and I am affiliated with the Thurston County Medical Equipment Bank. I just would like to start out by saying thank you so much. We are so happy that we were the recipient of the Share the Plate this year. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how I got started. I attended a board meeting, but I was actively involved as a volunteer, and then I became actively involved as a board member and now as a grant writer. So, but we had family members that used the medical equipment bank, and it was an incredibly valuable service. It's actually been referred to as an essential service, and I couldn't agree more, because we have people coming in all the time that are telling us how we have changed their lives, how they have benefit, and how they couldn't do it without the resources that we provide. And we are now actually becoming more sustainable. We're coming bigger. We're getting our name out there. And that is by the help and the assistance of people like your congregation, but also we have changed our location from where we have been for 14 years, and it's been the best thing ever. We stayed there for the longest time in the basement of a funeral home because the people that were there were friends of our president, and it was rent-free, but it was the best thing ever. We have changed our location to 3537 Martin Way, which is centrally located, and we are close to the medical community. We are close to both Olympia and Lacey and Tumwater, and we are able to provide more services, more hours, more volunteers, and just wonderful and positive things are happening all the way around. And so it's just wonderful that we can partner with your congregation and get our name out there. One of the biggest things that we plan on doing with the grant is creating a social platform and creating more exposure such that people can know and see that we're there. And I would just like to thank you again. I look forward to inviting you to come, and I look forward to anyone stopping by and seeing what we're about. Thank you so much.
For those online, there are many ways which you can give, and you'll find those in the chat. For those on site, there are also many ways you can give, and we'll be passing around a basket this morning. So if you go ahead and do that, you can donate into the basket. May the offering now be generously given as it's gratefully received.
One foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love.
Don't give up hope.
Don't give up hope.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
Don't you give up.
Don't you give up.
Keep moving on.
Keep moving on. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. One foot in front of the other and lead with love.
Lift up your eyes.
Lift up your eyes.
Don't you despair.
Don't you despair.
Look up ahead.
Look up ahead.
The path is there.
The path is there. You gotta put one foot in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love.
I know you're scared.
I know you're scared.
And I'm scared too.
And I'm scared too.
But here I am.
But here I am.
Right next to you.
Right next to you. You gotta put one foot in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other
Thank you so much for your generous gifts and all the ways that you share them. We came together this morning bringing everything that is in our lives. Let's open our hearts to the complexity of life as we place stones in the water of community. You will hear a drumbeat as we share today. It brings into our aware individual hearts beat, and together we create the heartbeat of our community. So right now, let's just take a deep breath together, in and out, as we open our hearts to receive the complexity of all that is in our lives and our community today. Connie Rule shares that Norm, her beloved husband of 14 years, peacefully died this past Tuesday at the age of 99. Connie relishes their years together, and especially these past months, which included a celebration of Norm's life with his friends and family in September. This joyous celebration was enjoyed by all, and especially Norm. Connie, we send you our love and care to you and your family as you mourn, and may Norm's spirit be at peace. Pat Sonnenstall shares that she received a hard diagnosis this week after months of not feeling well. Pat has been diagnosed with cancer and is electing to receive palliative care services. She is currently in the hospital. I visited her yesterday, and she is considering where she can best get the care that she needs. Pat is supported by her husband Walt and her son Eric and his family, who are traveling here from Ireland this week. Pat and Walt promise they will reach out to us as they need our continued support. Pat, we send you our love and care as you enter this next phase of your life journey. Anita McIntosh shares that her son Michael had a stroke last week at the age of 55. He is recovering and headed to a rehab center this coming week. Anita, we send our love and care to Michael, to you and your family as you weather this next challenge. May Michael recover well and have the support that he needs to do so. For those online today, I invite you to share from your heart by entering in the chat. Those of us in the sanctuary can see your sharing on the screen. And for those on site today, I invite you to come forward if there's something you'd like to bring into the community. You may place a stone in the water as you hold your sharing in your heart. Please come up by the side aisle and return by the center aisle. Let's hear the heartbeat of our community as we reach out our hearts in love and care to all those who share today. We'll place a stone in the water for all that has been shared from the heart online. And one more stone placed in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken this day. Please be in whatever way is comfortable for you right in this moment. And I invite you to find your heartbeat. You might put a hand on your chest or feel your pulse at your throat or on your wrist. You might just pause and listen closely. Listen to your heartbeat. As your heart beats, notice that you are alive. Your heart beats oxygen and nutrients and warmth throughout your body. Feel how you are nurtured. On this cold morning, feel that warmth in your body. You are alive. And now call to mind someone who loves you. Someone who loves you. It could be someone from your past or your present, or perhaps an imagined future. Feel that they love you. Feel how they love you. Feel their love. You are alive. You are loved. Let's be in silence together.
Let's remain seated and sing together hymn number 1060. As we sing of hope and joy, as we sing of hope and joy today. Some know only anguish and despair. How can we lift our voices in this way when some have pain and misery to spare? If a crumbling world we would renew, we must sing no ordinary song. Peals from the noisy gong will never do. In every breath, compassion must be on. Let our song, our greatest hopes, contain laughter of a well-fed child, its tune, bruised over every heartbeat, its refrain, its harmony from peaceful cities sing of joy while hammering each nail. Sing of hope while pulling every weed. So shall we sing together and prevail. May every hallelujah bear us seed.
Today's first reading is by anthropologist Dr. Jane Goodall. Hope is often misunderstood. People tend to think that it's simply passive wishful thinking. I hope something will happen, but I'm not going to do anything about it. This indeed is the opposite of real hope, which requires action and engagement.
Well, it's been almost 4 years since the world changed, since we responded to a new virus by shutting down pretty much everything. And at this time, 4 years ago, most of us didn't know what was coming and how we would be challenged in the months and years to come. Do you remember how you felt 4 years ago? I remember at first feeling, well, just confused. What is this? And what is happening right now? I remember seeking information, being attached to news sources along with the governor's news feed. And I had the State Department of Health and the Thurston County Health Department in my favorites. As we tried to make sense of these things, we asked each other, what is happening? I remember feelings of confusion, curiosity, and lots of concern about the health of myself, my family and friends, and of you. And concern about how to minister and run a congregation in such a time. At first, it was both daunting and a bit exhilarating. It's quite something to come together and rise to meet a challenge. As I look back, as time went on, my questions switched to things like, how can this be happening? How did we get here in this country? We lacked clear direction and information. We lacked medical supplies. We realized that our infrastructure is way more fragile than many of us realized. My feelings became more challenging, sometimes anger and fear. I struggled to take in what was happening and realized that things would never be the same. Remember when we were told that we might be shut down for about 6 weeks or so? Yeah. So when we passed the 8-week mark in May, I remember wondering how long we could go on as we were. I remember feeling weary and sometimes despair. Would I get sick? Would my husband, my family, and friends? Would you? What was ministry in this time? And was I up for it, even when I wasn't sure what it was? Then George Floyd was killed by police, and the nation erupted in frustration and anger. We cried, enough. Enough COVID, enough racism, enough death. Do you remember how you felt in those months and years? It's so hard to keep hope when things are so challenging. Do you remember what kept you going? Were there people or things that gave you hope? Here's some of the hopeful things that I recall from that time. Dr. Fauci became a touch point for many, an inspiration of clarity, communication, and competence in a trying time, or a symbol of government overstep. Whether you loved him or you hated him, he was there. Organizing. People took to the streets in protest of racism and the death of yet another Black man. Teddy bear scavenger hunts. We took ourselves outside, and so people put teddy bears in their windows for children of all ages to look for, sometimes masks included. Banging pots and pans from windows and balconies. People around the world adopted the Spanish practice of banging pots and pans in defiance of isolation, panic, and fear. Howling. Across the country, each night at 8 p.m., people went outside to howl at the moon in gratitude for the healthcare workers and first responders who were battling the pandemic. We still howl. We took ourselves and our services outside. We gathered when we could, getting canopies and other equipment, taking care of ourselves and of our community. And we wore masks inside and outside for a while, protecting ourselves and each other. We still do. These were some of the things during COVID that helped us feel some agency and gave us some hope. So here's what I notice about how we found hope during COVID. We did what we could. As Dr. Goodall said in our reading, hope requires action and engagement. We protested, we wrote letters, we attended city council meetings on Zoom, we wore masks, we wiped down our groceries. When we could, we got vaccinated, and we kept connected with Zoom and outdoor activities. Some of us took up hobbies, and I am the beneficiary of one of those hobbies. Mary McCann took up knitting, and this stole, my COVID stole, is the result of her knitting. It says love. There's a chalice, and not alone. Her friend Anna Garrett put all of the knitting squares together. We did what we could to give us hope. In her book, Hope in the Dark, activist Rebecca Solness writes that hope and action are linked. Hope feeds action, and action is impossible without hope. Hope is the basis for our action. Solnit says, hope gets you there, work gets you through. Hope is not passive wishful thinking. It's a practice. I would say it's a spiritual practice. It takes intention, action, which can then feed our further hope. I notice that hope is grounded in uncertainty. And there was so much uncertainty during COVID. Many people live with uncertainty all the time, and for others of us used to stability and what we thought was certain, the ground shifted, and we had levels of uncertainty that many of us were not used to and maybe not prepared for. But if things are certain, if we know the outcome, there's no reason for hope. If we know the outcome, what we would hope for, what could we hope for? Something different than reality? That's denying the reality right in front of us. So hope is present when we don't know what will happen, and we still have a sense that we can influence the outcome. Solnit writes, hope locates itself in the premise that we don't know what will happen, and that in the spaciousness of uncertainty is room to act. To be hopeful means to be uncertain about the future, to be tender toward possibilities, to be dedicated to change all the way down to the bottom of your heart. Hope exists when we don't know, and in that not knowing, we can act. Hope is risky. To hope is to act for the future, knowing that the outcome we want may not happen, that we might lose. When we hope, we open ourselves to heartbreak. Solnit writes, to hope is dangerous, and yet hope is the opposite of fear, for to live is to risk. And during COVID, we saw that hope and heartbreak can exist at the same time. We may have felt angry and sad and filled with despair at the same time that we were grateful for what it was that we had. Hope means facing what is, heartbreak and all, while we act for something different. And last, I noticed that hope is an act of the Spirit. In his reflection, Kurt quoted Václav Havel, who said that hope is a state of mind, not the state of the world. Hope is an orientation of the Spirit, an orientation of the heart. So I think hope is a spiritual practice, a risky choice grounded in uncertainty and coexisting with heartbreak. Hope requires open and courageous minds, hands, and hearts.
Our second reading is an excerpt from All About Love by Bell Hooks. Everywhere we learn that love is important, and yet we're bombarded by its failure. This bleak picture in no way alters the nature of our longing. We still hope that love will prevail. We still believe in love's promise. Our hope lies in the reality that so many of us continue to believe in love's power. We believe it is important to know love. We believe it is important to search for love's truth. To open our hearts more fully to love's power and grace, we must dare to acknowledge how little we know of love in both theory and practice.
Our nation continues to be in a time of reckoning when it comes to racism and white supremacy culture. The eruption that followed George Floyd's murder during COVID was just one of many such events, and it was a galvanizing event for many people to recognize and wrestle with racism in America. Yet we continue to be bombarded with our failure to address systemic racism. So how do we hold on to hope in these times? How do we continue to believe in love's power to bring about justice? On March 21st, 2021, at a United Nations conference, Pope Francis said this: "Racism is a virus that quickly mutates and instead of disappearing, goes into hiding and lurks in waiting. Instances of racism continue to shame us, for they show that our supposed social progress is not as real or as definitive as we think." So you see, racism and COVID have a lot in common. Both are viruses that are highly contagious, and so people are easily infected. Both viruses are pandemic, widespread across the world. Both viruses have become part of our culture, part of the air that we breathe. We have learned to live with COVID and, to some extent, with racism. And both viruses adapt so that when we think we have them under control, they surprise us with another variant, another way of harming and spreading. The symptoms of COVID are a runny nose, fever, cough, aches. The symptoms of racism are poverty, homelessness, mass incarceration, detention centers, militarization of the police. The list goes on. And our emotional response to racism may be a lot like our response to COVID: confusion, curiosity, anger, fear, exhilaration, exhaustion. So how do we hold hope as we wrestle with the virus of racism? This weekend, we honor the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I wanted to reflect on hope today in particular, because Dr. King knew about despair, and he also knew about hope. Dr. King knew that despair is contagious, and he also knew that hope is contagious. If you doubt that hope is contagious, I encourage you to listen to King's "I Have a Dream" speech, delivered on August 28, 1963 at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The speech is all over the internet. I recommend that you listen to it, not just read it, because in that speech and in his life, Dr. King radiated hope. And his hope is contagious, even decades after his death. King's hope was grounded in his faith, and a faith in a future that was possible, a faith that he shared and returned to again and again, the faith, hope, and love that he found in the teachings of Jesus in the Christian Bible. In his I Have a Dream speech, he spoke of the difficulties of today and tomorrow, and he laid out his dream for a just and united nation. And then King said this: "This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will all be free one day." From his letters and his colleagues, we know that King was sometimes discouraged, angry, afraid, and weary. Goodness, how could he not be? Yet he returned again and again to his faith and to the spiritual practice of hope. He continued to believe that a different world was possible, that the future was not certain, and that there was room, spacious room, for change. And King knew that the enemy of hope isn't despair, it's disconnection. He knew that when we disengage from each other as human beings, when we forget love, hope for the future gets so much harder. What we know about keeping hope in hard times is that it requires engagement and action. We learned that with COVID, and we can learn that with racism. So to help combat COVID, we're told to do 3 things: protect ourselves and others by wearing a mask and staying home if we're sick, getting vaccinated, and paying attention to ventilation and good airflow. Those things are pretty familiar by now, aren't they? So here's some corresponding actions that we can use to combat the virus of racism. We can protect ourselves and others by getting clear about our values and our spiritual grounding. Why are we engaged in the work of anti-racism? What values will help us be clear about our why? What is our North Star to guide us in the right direction when we have a choice to make about how we act? What practices will help us refill our spirits and sustain our work? The second thing we can do is vaccinate ourselves with anti-racist knowledge and wisdom. Racism is in us and all around us, and so we need to build antibodies to it. Listen to people of color to learn about how racism came to be and how it lives. Learn the history that we were not taught. Learn about how we as individuals and as a society have been impacted by racism. Learn about the experience of others who are not like us, who are not like us as individuals. And if you are white, use your knowledge and wisdom to help other white people learn. And the third thing we can do is pay attention to what is around us to identify what supports racism. What are the ways that racism is built into our systems of education, medical care, policing and laws, housing, transportation, zoning, and everything else in our infrastructure. How do we rid that infrastructure of the virus of racism? This is the hard and meaningful work of anti-racism and racial justice. And this is the work of a faith community that puts love at the center. Here, we do the inner work of values clarification and spiritual practice so that we can bring that grounding into this community and into the world beyond, the world that needs our hope and love so much. This is the infinite loop of inner and outer growth as we change ourselves and we change the world. In February of 1968, at a Washington, D.C. address, just 2 months before he was assassinated, King said, "We must accept finite disappointment, but we must never lose infinite hope." King left us a legacy of love and hope with dreams for a world that is more loving and more just. We know how to hold hope and act together out of that place of hope and love. We've been practicing. Now it's up to us. Let's take a moment of silence together.
Let's rise and sing together. Love will guide us, hymn number 131.
Two quick things. The after-service program you can view from here on the screen, so you don't need to go home and do it online. And then also I will be leading the Reflection Circle right after service in the youth room for anybody that would like to join me.
Thank you. Let's extinguish our chalice with these words from the Reverend Kevin Jago. When the candle dims, the wax almost spent, The light turns amber like a sunset. Still it provides light. Still it provides heat. Still it can kindle a new flame and pass its glow on and contribute to new illumination. When sunsets turn to new days, when seasons transform all, when the candle dims, all is not lost. Hope continues, uncertain and true, like candlelight, ready to spark again. All is not lost. May you go in peace, go in joy, go in love.